You're listening to the Multifamily Leadership Podcast with Patrick Antrim, your source for success strategies for multifamily professionals, CEOs, executive leaders, and aspiring leaders that want to drive high-performance results for their property or portfolio.
All right, welcome multifamily friends. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about you. You are the capital. And for many of you out there, listeners that are CEOs, asset managers, investors, or even aspiring leaders, leasing agents, maintenance directors, wherever you are in the organization or in the investment cycle, it's important to understand that people are the capital. Now, we've heard a lot of brochure talk. We've heard a lot of employer brands and value statements, mission statements talk about people are the most important asset. I think everybody's heard this. We've gone deep into the importance of people. We call it the people management business. But beyond that, what's most important is as you approach your day, as you approach the things that you expect to get out of this business, to get out of that company you're working for, to get out of that investment you're making, time and financial commitments, we have to take an understanding that our dependence on another organization, a lender, a company, a supervisor, whatever that is not necessarily what we've come to believe. In other words, we are the capital. Without people, there are no entities, there are no corporations, there are no properties, right? So the more we have elevated value of self, of ourself, of our role in the process, if we're a leasing agent, if we're a maintenance technician, maintenance supervisor, director of operations, wherever you are in the organization, we have to understand the importance of our role in the process. And once we begin to elevate ourselves to new levels, it puts a higher perspective on what our responsibility is to others in the community, to those in the investment cycle, if it be shareholders, investors, third-party property managers, wherever you are in the business. The more investment you make in yourself, the higher levels you take yourself, the more results you can create for others. And this is a very simple and oversimplified process, but I think it's important to sort of start our day with that in mind. We need to understand that some of our biggest challenges that we face in our career, sometimes they come to us, sometimes we create them. But there are certain steps you can take to overcome them and push through them and give an opportunity to demonstrate what your leadership and your capabilities are to others. At the Multifamily Leadership Summit recently, Jennifer Staciokas, who is the Senior Vice President for Marketing and Training at Pinnacle, recently said this. Listen in.
There's been a couple times in my career when I've been offered additional departments to oversee or additional responsibility. And sometimes you start to second guess yourself, but you always have to have that internal voice that's saying, I can do this, I can overcome this. And I think it just all comes down to constantly learn, constantly read, be inquisitive, ask a lot of questions. I have found in my career that a lot of people don't want to ask questions because they're afraid that it signals that they don't know something. And I think I always encourage people, I'd much rather you ask me questions than try and sort something out and really struggle with it.
I just think that is just such sound advice. I mean, how many times do we go about our day and we think that we're being second guessed or we're a little insecure about what the boss says because the boss came in and stormed in and asked for a few reports, and at the end of the day, it led an impression on you and you didn't feel good that day, and that allowed you to have a not so great experience with a resident or another financial investor, whatever it is. But are you ever feeling that you're not good enough? Have you ever felt that way in your career? I know I have. And a lot of what I've accomplished in my career has been driven by not feeling that I was ready or not feeling that I was capable enough. And I every time I took on more, went to a lease up or a new acquisition or whatever it was. And I felt like, senior housing, when I first got into senior housing, I had never done senior housing. And so I had to become curious about things. And what Jennifer was talking about is this constant learning and this constant self-education of getting better. The 5 friends, as Jim Rohn used to say, is the 5 friends that you have is the sum of who you become, and who you surround yourself with impacts your ability to get to the next level, your ability to be exposed to certain opportunities and mentors and these types of things. And so this constant commitment of self, you are the capital, this constant commitment to getting better personally so you can be better professionally is very important. And what Jennifer said there about having this constant learning and this constant, reading books and getting better personally is very, very important. The idea of curiosity, I'll just kind of button up a little bit about what she talked about there, just being curious. And that is so important, because when we are curious, what tends to happen is it forces us to be interested in others. And, you think about just, renting an apartment, and, this matters a lot to those that are investing at the high level, because when you're on site, leasing agents are curious. They're trained to sell and create an experience for the residents, but when they are curious about others, so much that the people that come into that community to tour the apartment building are now feeling better about themselves because someone's finally interested in them. Wow, I'm curious. So how did you get that job in that aerospace company or that new tech company in town or whatever it is? I'm curious, what does a project manager do? Oh, wow. And instead of showing them pools and the obvious of amenities that have already been there, and every other property has that, this is an opportunity for you to differentiate yourself from the competition, differentiate yourself as a leader within that company, to be that person that just somehow creates success because they're curious about others. Think that is super important to know. And thinking about the idea of leadership in itself, think about it as removing complexity out of somebody's life. I mean, in renting an apartment, if you can remove the complexity that a renter goes through, they're going to enjoy that process. If you're curious about how they feel and what they're doing and what they're interested in and their interest in the world, and that's going to build rapport and relationship. It's going to allow you to have a more memorable transaction. But when it comes to leadership, both from facing the customer and also your employees and those that you work for and work with, when you can take the complexity out of somebody's day, you can rise to new levels of an organization. And I just want to share a little bit more with Jennifer and what she had to share at the summit about being a leader.
So when I think about being a leader, it all comes down to the people that you surround yourself with. So I think my proudest achievement was the team that I had built when I was with Lincoln. And then the questions that I asked myself when I left Lincoln to go to Pinnacle was, can I do it again? Or could I even do it better? So I think it was one of those, joining Pinnacle, coming up with what's the DNA that I'm looking for in those people that I'm going to hire? What are the characteristics that I'm looking for, and how can we build a team around that? And really building a diverse team that thinks a little bit different. I know a lot of us talk about finding like-minded people. My strategy is to really find people that think a little bit differently and maybe challenge my thoughts. So it not only grows me, but it also grows them.
And if you think about it, that's what we're doing, is we're growing leaders, we're growing communities, we're building developments that are building lifestyles for people. And in those lifestyles, there are people that work and they call that property their home. And we are building careers for people that are taking care of those residents, that are taking care of investments that families are making. They're diversifying their holdings. They're placing their financial assets into investment vehicles that are investing in multifamily. And you, as a leasing agent, maintenance supervisor, CEO, aspiring leader, wherever you are in the organization, you are the capital that makes all of that happen. So when we think about developing capital investing capital, it's a risk, right? And there's a calculation and due diligence and team of people that come together to figure out if this investment in or development in an apartment community or acquiring another asset is going to return enough value to make that risk adjustment. And so when we as leaders are working and we interface with toxic situations or problematic employees or a resident that just isn't getting, compliance with a covenant within the lease or whatever you're dealing with, we incorporate into our lives certain things that we do that put us at risk. Leadership risk, human capital risk for our own careers. Because if you're an employee, you have one flow of income. Now, a company has multiple properties and has multiple flows of income. Okay, so they're at less risk sometimes in the risk evaluation of, do we need to move an employee? Less impact. Things go on. An employee loses their job and it's over. That's their only flow of income. It's problematic. And so there's this heightened feeling and intensity around taking risks in your career. Should I speak up? Should I say what's right here? I know the values of the corporation are this, but should I say what I need to say? And that's a risk you need to take. And that risk is hard because technically, if we're not investing in ourselves and we're not getting to the next level, then we're not going to feel like we are valued, regardless of what others think of us. If we're not feeling like we're coming from a position of strength that, at the end of the day, I'm going to make decisions and actions in alignment with the integrity of myself and the organization for which I work, then that without that internal compass, we're going to react to the world. And that's going to be emotional. It's going to feel different. And so as you go through your career, you're going to be taking risks on people. And it might be a risk you take on others or letting someone else within, putting somebody in charge of something they've never been in charge of before. Whatever that is, it's a risk. And it's sometimes hard to do. And I'm going to bring you inside the conversation again with Jennifer and share what she had to say about taking risks in her own personal career.
I had been with Lincoln for 15 years and I was entrenched in that culture. I used to say our colors were green and then we changed to blue, but that we would bleed green, that it was something that I had grown up in my career with. And so it was a big risk for me to leave that environment where I had that comfort, where I had respect in the organization, and decided to take the leap. I decided that I kind of wanted to do something from scratch and build 2 different departments or 3 different departments that I oversee from scratch and hire a team and put the platform and the people in place. So it was definitely a risk and it's absolutely paid off.
I just love that conversation because we're talking about being in a state of creativity. Jennifer talks about building something from scratch. It's so important. And leaving that comfort zone of I'm a property manager and I may need to make that shift to a regional property manager. I need to move from that comfort zone of making everybody happy on site into figuring out how to make investors happy and corporate compliance happy and residents happy and different elements of the business. And so every step you take in your career, if it's, you were buying senior housing and now you're going to be buying market rate housing, wherever you are, if you're an investor, CEO, what have you, you're making daily improvisations and daily steps out of your comfort zone if you're growing. If we're growing, we're creating and we're building, and that feels good. And when we feel good, we show up better for other people. And when we show up better for other people, bigger things can happen for you, your career, and your investment holdings. If you found this show valuable to you and you think somebody else could benefit from it, I would encourage you to share. We would really appreciate that. That helps us understand if we're doing a good job. Also, if you want to go to multifamilyleadership.com, you can get show notes and some other resources as we develop new content in the future. We'd love to hear from you, what we can do better, how we could make your day in multifamily better. See you in the next show.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the Multifamily Leadership Podcast. For show notes and other resources, visit multifamilyleadership.com.